Well, come to Nazir fears. Ever wonder what truly goes bump in the night when everyone else is asleep? Tonight we're diving into 3 bone-chilling true stories from people who've experienced the darkest side of the night shift. These aren't just tales. They're real encounters that will make you rethink working past midnight. Before this, watch these 3 stories.
Like, subscribe, share, and click that bell icon.
The Silent Patient. Daniel had always prided himself on being the most dependable night nurse at St. Augustine's Hospital, a sprawling medical facility where the halls never truly slept. The night shift had always been his domain, a quiet, predictable stretch of hours when most of the hospital's chaos slept alongside its patients. But one particularly cold November night, Daniel's perception of calm would shatter. The hospital's emergency room had been unusually busy that evening, and the scent of antiseptic, mixed with the faint, coppery tang of blood, clung to the air. Daniel was assigned to the new patient on the 7th floor, room 712, a man in his mid-40s who had been admitted for severe respiratory distress. There was nothing particularly unusual about the patient's file, just a standard set of vitals and a note that he was mostly unresponsive. When Daniel arrived, the man lay still, his eyes closed, chest rising and falling with the slow rhythm of the ventilator. Daniel checked the monitors and ensured all the connections were stable before moving on to his next rounds, though a creeping unease had begun to settle over him. Something about the man's stillness seemed wrong, as if he were merely pretending to breathe. Over the next few hours, Daniel noticed subtle anomalies. The patient's eyes would twitch beneath closed lids. His fingers would curl as if grasping at some invisible object, and at times the monitor would display irregular spikes of heart rate that quickly corrected themselves without explanation. Daniel mentioned it to Dr. Whitaker during rounds, but she dismissed it as common anomalies in intensive care patients. As the night wore on, Daniel found himself alone in the dimly lit hallway more often than usual, the faint hum of fluorescent lights mingling with distant groans and the occasional beep from a monitor. Then came the first real shock. While checking the patient's IV line, Daniel glanced down to see the man's head slowly lift, eyes still half closed, staring directly at him. His mouth opened in a silent scream, but no sound emerged. Daniel stumbled back, heart pounding, certain that the patient had somehow regained consciousness. But as he steadied himself, the man's head fell back onto the pillow, eyes closing once again. Daniel tried to rationalize it, perhaps a muscle spasm, some neurological hiccup, but deep inside, he knew it had been deliberate, as if the man had been aware of his presence the entire time. Hours later, as Daniel made his final rounds before the morning shift, he noticed the monitor for room 712 flatline for a brief moment. He rushed in, ready to perform CPR, but the patient was perfectly fine, breathing steadily, pulse normal. Shaken, Daniel stepped out into the hall, only to hear a faint whisper echo behind him. "Why are you still here?" He spun around, but no one was there. The hospital corridor stretched endlessly, lights flickering. Daniel's phone buzzed, an alert from security cameras showing the patient sitting upright, motionless, staring directly at Daniel as he patrolled the hallways. The footage was time-stamped only minutes before Daniel had checked the room. Panic surged through him, a cold realization settling in. He had been watched all night, and the man in room 712 was far from ordinary. By dawn, Daniel had made up his mind to transfer the patient. But when the morning staff arrived, Room 712 was empty, the bed neatly made, monitors disconnected, and no record of admission existed in the hospital's system. Daniel reported it to the administration, but the files had been wiped, as if the patient had never existed. That night, and every night after, Daniel couldn't shake the memory of those hollow eyes and the whisper that followed him down the hallways, a chilling reminder that some presences don't need sound to terrify, and that the night shift sometimes reveals horrors that vanish with the daylight. Story 2. The Janitor's Secret. Ethan had taken the night shift at Crestview Office Towers out of necessity, the security guard job paying more than he'd earned in months of odd work. The building, an old relic of the 1970s, had seen better days, peeling wallpaper, flickering fluorescent lights, and a labyrinth of empty cubicles that smelled faintly of mold and stale coffee. Most nights were uneventful, just walking the halls, checking doors, and occasionally resetting a tripped alarm. But one night, as the autumn wind rattled the exterior windows, Ethan discovered that the building held secrets that no one in the day shift could imagine. He began his rounds as usual, logging doors and monitoring cameras from the tiny security office. The screens displayed empty hallways, except for the faint shadow of the janitor, Mr. Carlson, who always seemed to appear in the most unexpected places. Ethan had never seen the man after hours, yet the cameras occasionally caught him sweeping floors in areas that were closed for renovation. At first, Ethan dismissed it as a glitch or the janitor's odd schedule, but soon small things started to unsettle him. Items on desks would be rearranged despite the building being empty, and the faint echo of footsteps would follow him down the dark corridors. One night, while inspecting the basement, Ethan noticed a narrow door he had never seen before, tucked behind the storage closets. Curiosity outweighed caution. He opened the door to find a long, dimly lit corridor that smelled of damp earth. At the far end, a flickering light revealed a makeshift office, papers scattered across a desk, and photographs of employees pinned to the walls. But it wasn't the images that chilled him. It was the subtle markings over each face, tally marks, dates, and strange symbols that pulsed faintly under the fluorescent glow. Ethan froze. A voice behind him whispered, low and deliberate, "You shouldn't be here." Spinning around, he saw Mr. Carlson standing impossibly still, holding a mop as if it were a weapon. Ethan stumbled back, heart hammering, but the janitor didn't move. Instead, the room seemed to shift. The photographs of the employees subtly changed, their expressions twisting into silent screams. Ethan fled, but every corridor seemed unfamiliar, the layout of the basement warping as if the building itself were alive.
Like, subscribe, share, and click that bell icon.
He finally reached the security office, slamming the door behind him and locking it. Yet the monitors began flickering with images of himself from angles he didn't recognize. Sitting at his desk, walking the halls, staring back at the camera with wide eyes of terror. The whisper came again, this time right behind him. "You're part of it now." The next morning, the day shift found Ethan asleep at his desk, a cold sweat coating his skin. When questioned, he muttered about seeing the janitor in impossible places, about rooms that shouldn't exist, and faces that weren't human. But the management dismissed it as exhaustion or stress, and the cameras had no record of the hidden corridor. Weeks later, new security guards would take Ethan's place, unknowingly patrolling the building at night while the janitor continued his silent rounds, doors and shadows shifting around him, keeping the building secret and waiting for the next night shift victim to stumble upon the corridor that should not exist. Story 3. The Night Call. Sophia had taken the graveyard shift at the Call Point 911 dispatch center reluctantly, knowing it would interfere with her social life, but needing the stability after months of unemployment. The center was a dim, humming space, filled with rows of consoles, each lit by the soft glow of monitors and the occasional blinking red light of an active line. Most nights were routine, a few false alarms, minor traffic incidents, and the occasional domestic dispute that required careful coordination with local law enforcement. But one night, in the middle of December, Sophia would encounter a call that changed her understanding of reality. It began as a standard 911 call, a quiet, almost imperceptible voice whispering for help. The number traced back to an abandoned neighborhood on the outskirts of the city, where homes had been boarded up for years. Sophia tried to reassure the caller, asking for details, but the line crackled, and the voice grew distorted, almost inhuman, repeating only one phrase: "Don't look behind you." At first, Sophia assumed it was a prank, a bored teenager testing the system. But the urgency in the whisper, the subtle undertones of fear, made her hesitate. She patched in a patrol officer who promised to check the area immediately. Minutes passed. The call continued, the voice now repeating the phrase in staccato bursts. "Don't look behind you. Don't look behind you. Don't." Sophia felt a chill run down her spine. She glanced at the monitors where multiple camera feeds from the neighborhood flickered. At first, they were empty, the streets deserted and silent. Then, in the corner of one screen, a shadow moved, shifting unnaturally, as if it were gliding just above the ground. Sophia's heart pounded as she realized the shadow mirrored the caller's movements, pacing in rhythm with the whispers. She grabbed her headset, trying to speak calmly, but the words caught in her throat as the lights in the dispatch center flickered, plunging the room into brief darkness. When they returned, the monitors displayed only static, and the line went dead. Sophia tried redialing, tracing the number again, but the address no longer existed. Confused and rattled, she leaned back in her chair, only to hear faint breathing behind her. Spinning around, there was nothing but the empty office, rows of silent consoles, and the faint hum of electricity. But the air felt heavy, charged with a presence she could not see. Throughout the rest of her shift, Sophia continued to receive sporadic calls from the same line. Silent, distorted, always repeating the same warning. No one else seemed to hear it, and no records existed for the number. Weeks later, Sophia left the night shift, refusing to return. Yet she could not erase the memory of the voice, the shadow on the screen, and the unmistakable sensation that something had been in the room with her, watching her every move. On quiet nights, when the wind rattled the dispatch center windows and the hum of computers filled the air, she would still hear it, faintly echoing in her mind, "Don't look behind you." And sometimes, when she glanced over her shoulder, she could swear she saw that same shadow lingering just beyond the corner of her vision, waiting patiently for the next night shift to claim.